Welcome to today's webinar, SharePoint Admin as a Service. I'm your host, Brad Gleeson, Vice President of Client Development, and today we've got a special guest, Michael Harris. He's alongside with being one of our managed services and SharePoint engineers. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about quality SharePoint admins and why they're so hard to come by. We'll also talk about SharePoint admin qualifications, SharePoint admin duties, why outsource. As always, we'll take questions at the end of our webinar today, and we'll also give away that $50 Amazon gift card. Okay? So we've talked in previous webinars about the talent gap in IT and how the supply of people with the unique skill sets required is not close to keeping pace with the demand at this point. So what about the SharePoint admin position specifically makes finding qualified SharePoint admins so hard to find?
Well, to name a few, SharePoint has many moving parts, so there's a lot of different parts to SharePoint, that are constantly changing or being updated that the SharePoint admin would have to keep up with. So this is one of the big things. There's also many different uses for a SharePoint site. Some companies might just use it as a file database. Some might use it as their main internet site where clients would hit, and some might just use it as an intranet for their employees. SharePoint is also highly customizable, so you really can make your SharePoint site look like anything you want. We have some clients that come in, and when you first navigate to their site, you would never know it's a SharePoint site. It looks nothing like it, while some still just look like a basic team site. So it kind of goes to show how much customization you can have with SharePoint. SharePoint is also tied in to many other programs that are on the Windows server. So the admin is going to have to know about all of these different programs in the background also.
Excellent. So you can see how the highly customizable nature of SharePoint sites requires a versatile tool set of skills in a SharePoint admin. So let's talk about some important traits a SharePoint admin should possess. Now, we should probably start off on what SharePoint is built on, and is Windows Server admin experience important to SharePoint admins?
Yeah, it's very important. A SharePoint admin is going to need to have knowledge of IIS, Active Directory, DNS, and network load balancing. So all of these different programs, like I said in the a couple minutes ago, the admin's going to have to know how to work all of these and how they tie into SharePoint. So these are big things the admin's going to need to know.
Gotcha. So what about SharePoint development, configuration, upgrades, and patching experience?
Yeah, this is also very important. The configuration is very important for the stability of the farm. If your SharePoint farm isn't configured correctly, you're going to have a hard time making any changes or adding anything down the road. It becomes almost impossible if it's not configured correctly. With upgrades and patching, it's a big part of security. If your farm isn't patched with the correct updates, then you're going to have issues with security moving forward. Your admin is also going to need to be able to plan the topology of the farm. That way you can prepare for future growth. You might eventually down the road want to upgrade or migrate, and if your farm isn't prepared, if your admin hasn't prepared for that, then it's going to make that process even more difficult.
All right, so you mentioned patching, and patching to me sounds like a security measure. How much security planning and configuring is involved in SharePoint administration?
Well, there's definitely a lot of security that comes with SharePoint. So some of those things are, which type of authentication do you want to use? There are a couple types you can use with SharePoint, and each one is going to dictate how users access your site. So that's going to need to be planned ahead of time. There's also SSLs, so you're going to need to know whether you want your sites to run off of port 80 or port 443. If you're running off of port 443, you're going to be more secure, and you're going to need to know that you need that SSL for that site to work correctly, or you'll get an error when you reach the site. You're also going to need to be able to configure user permissions. So you might want to have some users that you want to access some things on some sites. You might not want that same user to access something on a different site. So you're going to need that admin to know how they're going to configure the permissions on certain site collections or web applications to get those users to access what they need.
Understood. So, Michael, is farm topology a responsibility of a SharePoint admin?
Yeah, it definitely is. As mentioned before, you're going to want that admin to be able to create the topology of your farm ahead of time. That way you can grow with the site. So if your admin comes in and they don't really know how to configure the architecture of your site, you might be all mix match. You're not going to know who needs to go where. So that admin is going to need to know how many web apps you're going to need, what those web apps are for, how you're going to separate the information that you're doing within those web apps. They're going to need to know how many site collections you're going to have, what those site collections are for, who's going to access them. Even further, in those site collections, you're going to have subsites. Again, this is going to further divide what each site collection does or what's in it. And again, the permissions are going to need to be set. There's also service applications that need to be configured. Without them, many of the features of the farm won't work correctly. So the admin has to know how to do this. And again, this all has to be done before the farm is configured.
So I'm guessing that, like other IT positions, troubleshooting is going to be
right.
a pretty important skill at this level.
Yeah, so the admin definitely is going to need to know how to troubleshoot, and they're going to need certain skills while troubleshooting. Every admin needs to have critical thinking skills. So they're going to need to know how everything ties into SharePoint and what an issue might look like in the front and how it's affected in the back. Right? So all those programs you mentioned before are all going to tie in a certain way. And you're going to need to know, just by seeing the issue, how exactly you can troubleshoot this. They're also going to need problem-solving skills. If there's an issue and you don't know how to fix it or what's going on, you're going to have to research it. And you're going to need to know exactly what is happening in the background that's causing the issue you see in the front, really. So one of the big things the admin will need to know is where the logs are for each application and how to read them and what they end up meaning. Again, all these go into the troubleshooting skills that an admin would need, and they will need it for all of the applications in the background, as I mentioned before, IIS, Active Directory, and they're going to need to know how those tie into SharePoint.
Understood. So tell me, what kind of credentials or certifications are available for SharePoint admins?
Well, the most general configuration and farm planning is covered by the MCSE, which is a Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert. It's an exam that you have to take to get the certification. If a SharePoint admin has this and has earned this, then they probably have a nice foundation of knowledge and experience around the product.
Got it. So, I think sometimes folks kind of get into a trap where they're actually trying to utilize people in this position that might not have those certifications. So that's really, there's a reason why they're out there and people are actually qualifying for them. All right, so I assume that PowerShell experience is also going to be critical to this role.
Yes, it is. All Microsoft Server products can be deployed and managed with PowerShell. PowerShell really is, a beefed up version of command prompt, and it's an incredibly powerful tool that allows for scripted and repeatable SharePoint installations and many other uses. We use PowerShell mainly for automating long-running operations as well as automating SharePoint installations and configurations.
All right, so now that we've covered the experience needed, what are some of the typical job requirements as a SharePoint admin?
Right, and there's a lot that an admin does. So
you're saying I can go take a nap for the next few minutes?
I'll wake you up in a couple minutes when we get done.
Excellent.
So some of the roles that an admin would need to do would be adding users, resetting passwords. Those go back to Active Directory. You need to manage permissions on the sites themselves, as we mentioned with the topology. You need to know how you can go back and forth and how the permissions on site collections, subsites, and web apps are going to work. There's going to be issues with the server you might need to do. So there might be disk space issues that you need to troubleshoot. Again, as I mentioned, you need to know how to use an SSL certificate and configure that. There's also user modifications. You need to know how to configure site collection quota management. So you're going to need to know, how big you want your sites to get before they're capped or they're stopped. That way you don't have issues with disk space, as I mentioned before. You're also going to know how to configure user alerts and change site themes, which is an out-of-the-box feature. You're going to need to know how to change the title, description, and icons on the site. Again, there's more server changes you can make, so things like adding RAM, adding additional IPs to the server itself. And again, with SSLs, you're going to need to know how to create a CSR, which is kind of the base part of creating an SSL. You're going to need to know how to patch the servers manually. So again, this goes back to security and patching. If the right updates aren't applied, then you're going to have security issues on your servers and in your farm. You're also going to need to know how to work with credential prompts. There's browser issues. We have lots of clients come in, they have parts of their site missing or things that they can't see right. There's a lot of compatibility view issues that we have to go in and we have to help them and show their users how exactly you can configure your web browser to see your site successfully. Slow performance is a big issue that has to be troubleshooted, and there are just a wide range of different things that can cause slow performance, and that goes in, your admin has to know, like I said before, what's going on up top in the site and how it's affected by everything in the back. You're going to need to bring in service packs and hotfixes. Again, with the configuration, hopefully your admin would plan ahead of time, but sometimes you need to add servers to expand your farm. Your admin needs to know how to do that. They need to know how to edit master pages and page layouts within the site. They're going to need to know how to do simple workflows. It's another out-of-the-box feature. We have a lot of clients that have issues, and we're always happy to come in and help them and show them or do some workflows for them. There's also site definitions, info path form services, and data connection files that need to be managed. Another big thing, we have clients all the time. We go in and we manage and we help them with migrations and upgrades. So if you have a client, or you started out at 2010, SharePoint 2010, and you want to move up to 13 or 16, your admin is going to need to know exactly what they need to do to upgrade to the newer version of SharePoint and to migrate the data, which is a big deal, and it can be fairly difficult.
Well, we see a lot of folks call in for this service alone just because they get into an area that they just can't figure out. Or during that migration, maybe they've put in some custom third-party web parts and they just can't get past it. So these are all, these aren't things that you can just pick up by going out on Google and searching for it, right?
Yeah, definitely not. So more things that you can do is you're going to have to modify service application topology, which is, again, if everything isn't configured correctly, then parts of the site might not work. There's site quota management. The admins are going to create new subsites and new site collections, as I mentioned before. You need to have this planned out in advance of what you're going to build and how you're going to do it. Same goes for web applications. Another big thing that we have some clients have issues with is you can access sites with different names by configuring alternate access mappings. It's not a super complex process, but it can be tricky, so we help with it quite often. Another big thing is just adding content to the site. Not everybody has an easy time with that, so we go ahead and help there. Another big thing is a site navigation. Sometimes people complain that the navigation on the site doesn't really make sense. There's some some links that they want to go someplace or then they're not going already. We can go in and we can help them change to where their site is a little bit more easily navigable for them. We can add and help site collection features, export list and library contents to another place. Admins will need to install apps, which can be tricky. Some apps, there's a lot that goes into it that needs to be done. It can be easily messed up. Another big thing, you need to make sure the web applications have the proper security configurations. Your admin is going to need to know how to do that. There's role delineation among servers, so this goes in different servers in your farm are going to have different roles and different jobs that they do. If your admin doesn't know which roles should go where, then your farm might not work in the way you want it to, or might not work optimally. There's also template uploading and installation, search visibility configuration. Search is a big deal. It can cause a lot of issues and it breaks pretty easily. So they have to know how to go in and fix search, and you want that quick because search is a very big part of having SharePoint and having it work correctly. And one more thing is you need to know how to start and stop SharePoint services. Starting and stopping services is a big part of troubleshooting, and it's one of the steps in a lot of different processes.
So Michael, I have to give you an apology at this point because I didn't think ahead of time and bring oxygen to this webinar, because wow, that was a mouthful. And if you're a person that's out there that was able to check off all of those items on your list, well, wow, congratulations to you. You should be winning your $50 Amazon card, right? But typically that's not the case. That was no short list. And it might have been easier to ask, what job duties are not included. One could see how it might be easier to outsource this than try to find someone with all of these unique qualifications, because frankly, there's quite a lot of them. So the three main reasons why companies are outsourcing this type of work is, number one, access to functional expertise. Number two, focus on some core competencies, free up your team so that you guys can innovate on projects internally. And then usually the number one reason, which I've left here to the last, is cost reduction. And this is usually what everybody's looking for, is to find extra dollars within that ever-shrinking budget, the ever-shrinking IT budget as well. So those certainly apply when deciding whether to outsource SharePoint and admin assistance. You know, one of the things that you can make sure that you can count on with us specifically is that you'll have 24/7 access to 20 years of SharePoint expertise, and that says a lot. We've been there for quite some time, you know, helping folks out with SharePoint, and you can utilize that expertise even if you just have to fill a gap. You can also obviously expand your team, or you can consolidate roles again to save those important dollars.
We've prepared a quick motion graphic to show you some of the things that an admin would do in our package.
Yeah. So I think this is going to help demonstrate how we've disrupted the managed services market again by providing SharePoint Admin as a service in a subscription model that gives you the flexibility to utilize service from quarter time to full time, depending on what your unique need is.
With Fpweb.net's SharePoint Administrator, you get access to some basic features. Okay, so maybe it's more than some, or basic. I know what you must be asking yourself right now. That all sounds great, but what's the cost? SharePoint Administrator as a Service costs $3,495 per month. But now, you can access this same service for half of that price. For the reduced cost of $1,750 per month, you get the entire package that a SharePoint Administrator can provide you, at 40 hours of service per month. Interested? You can find us at www.fpweb.net/SharePoint.
So as you saw there, you can add our team to your team and remove the day-to-day SharePoint admin duties from your plate so that you can focus on bigger, more strategic projects related to your core business. Or you can also unburden your team from the larger projects so that your team can focus on assisting your specific users more quickly and efficiently. And if you don't need a full 40-hour-a-week FTE, well, bring Fpweb in as a part-time helper for a set rate, and that can go as low as $1,750 per month. As always, you can always visit Fpweb.net/SharePoint for more information on this very specific topic that we were handling today. If you have specific questions about your unique needs, you can always email me at sales@fpweb.net, or just pick up the phone and give me a call at 866-780-4678. And we're going to leave that number up on the screen while we take a few questions to start off. And one of the things that we just got from one of our viewers and listeners this afternoon is the question, is this for online or on-prem? And this is a great question. I just want to make sure people understand it can be on-prem or any cloud. Okay, so it doesn't have to be necessarily hosted with us. I think there's some benefits to that. I'd love to talk to you about it, but you know what? If that's just not going to be something that's in your roadmap, I would certainly like to talk more about what your unique situation is, and that pricing does still apply as far as that's concerned. Are you trying to take my job? This is an interesting question,
right?
And so maybe you can handle this one, right?
So no, we're definitely not trying to take your job. Our goal is to help you unload maintenance headaches so that you can focus on your core businesses and innovation.
Yeah, and think of it as an assistant. What if that assistant was a team of experts that were available 24/7, 365 for a fraction of the price of a full-time employee? You didn't have to pay this person the taxes or the benefits, and you didn't have to train or onboard this person too. So maybe think of it along those lines. Another question that we've got here is, what is the commitment? Well, the commitment here is either, at a minimum, we're talking about a 1-year subscription, or we'll go all the way out to a 5-year subscription. And some people will say, well, 5 years, I mean, that seems a little bit ridiculous. I mean, that's quite a long term. But, as we talk to more and more of our clients, they're really now focused on operating in an OpEx model, and in that OpEx they want some cost certainty around that. And the reason why we're offering it all the way out to 5 years is because we know that there are clients out there who want to take advantage of where the prices are today, because we, just like anybody else out there that offers managed services, a lot of it comes with supply and demand. So you can certainly sign up for just a year, but is there an opportunity, a good opportunity, that those prices are going to be more a year or two down the road? Certainly. That's typically how things work in just about everything in day-to-day life. So that's why we're offering a 1 to 5 year opportunity for you to be able to engage with us in. Another question we have is, did you say that migrations were covered? Okay. Yes. But we'll do a discovery and map out what the best options would be to accomplish your goals and to satisfy your specific timelines. And this is always a critical step, because can this person help in those migrations? Absolutely. You leverage them however you like, but if you've got a specific timeline that you're wanting this person to do most of the heavy lifting, let's have a conversation about that to make sure it fits what your timeline actually is.
So another question we have here is, what about SQL help?
Yeah, good question. So we can add a DBA, a network engineer, a developer, or even another admin to scale up your subscription as needed. Okay.
Another one is, how will this subscription model fit an enterprise as big as mine? Are there user limits?
Yeah, good question. As a matter of fact, we've been to some conferences in the past, and they say, well, it's nice that you've got some of your pricing laid out here, but that certainly couldn't work for somebody like, let's say, if we were as big as Ford Motor Company. And the fact of the matter is, well, it can. Specifically, it only depends on your unique need. So if you only need somebody to come in and work on your SharePoint projects or what you have in play, you could engage us at a part-time level. If you have more duties that you'd rather have us take on and free up your team to innovate on specific projects to your roadmap, that's absolutely something that we can do too. And again, we'll speak to those on a person-by-person basis to make sure that we're getting you exactly what your need is.
We do have another question here. It says, do you offer user adoption for Office 365 as part of your training? And do you / can you provide that outside of this subscription?
So on this question specifically, I'd love to know more about your situation. So again, if you can give me a call afterwards or send me your email or send Bill an email, we'll make sure and cover that specifically. I think one of the other questions that we had was, will this be offered, this webinar be offered after the fact? And yes, as always, we will do that. We will make sure this is available for your viewing pleasure whenever you like, and all you have to do is access that through www.Fpweb.net. Another question we've got here, how will this subscription model fit that enterprise? Yeah, we already covered that one. Do the hours roll over if we don't use them? And I think they're specifically talking here about, if you're coming in at a part-time or a full-time, it depends on what that hours look like. And it does within the month. So let me explain that a little bit. In our minimal subscription, you can get 10 hours a week of admin service, SharePoint admin specifically, and as a result of that, if let's say you didn't use any admin services in week 1, how many hours do I have left in the month? In this case, you'd still have 40. Okay, so any of those hours that you would have, even if you use them all within the last week, you'd still have 40 hours within that specific month. Okay, I think we got another question. Nope, I think that's it. I think that's it at this point. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to email a recording of this webinar by the end of the week, and that'll come along with a link to register for our next webinar as well, which will be June 13th at 1 p.m. Central. And I think it's about time to announce that winner of that $50 Amazon gift card. Michael, I'll let you do the honors today for that one.
All right, so our winner of the gift card today is Richard Ostapinski.
You should get a $50 gift card for. I think you nailed that last name, as a matter of fact. So congratulations on that. So that's going to be our webinar for today. Thanks again for joining, and don't hesitate to give us a call with any questions. And we'll look for you next week.